Bob Seger's classic hit, Main Street, resonating in a big way in Indiana. There's a new strategy to support and grow Hoosier small businesses, which make up 99% of all Hoosier businesses. Meet the man in charge of the new Indiana Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, Brian Schutt, on the overall mission, Indiana higher ed's role, and why baby boomers are factoring into the equation. The Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC, is next. And I'm pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Brian Schutt. Brian is the brand new director of the brand new Indiana Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And Brian, thanks for taking the time to join me on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here, Gary. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, and I've got to be upfront. I've got to have full disclosure. You and I go way back to when you were just a little guy, and a really little guy. You hung out at one of our neighbors' house, Tom Morales, in particular, Seth Morales, a best buddy of yours. And so I remember you running around our yard and all up and down Capistrano Court back in the day.
Some of my best memories. And I just have the highest regard for you and your family, Gary. Thanks for setting context for everybody.
Great. Let's dive right into it. This is a new office with a big title, Indiana Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Tell us about the mission of this office and why create this new office that's really focused on entrepreneurship and innovation.
Yeah, this was a key priority for Governor Braun. As a Main Street business owner and entrepreneur himself, he knows better than anyone that these types of businesses that we're focused on are the backbone of communities across Indiana. So when he took office, he looked at the map of there's around 570,000 businesses in Indiana, and about 99% of them fit this description of a Main Street business, and felt like that we could do more to be focused on them on the support side, but also understanding where government might be impeding. And I think the genesis of this was the governor's own background and just his deep knowledge for knowing how important these types of businesses are for Main Streets across Indiana.
Well, as you look at that, and when you talk about a Main Street business, what is a Main Street business? And when you talk about entrepreneurship and innovation, I think immediately the thought goes to a cool high-tech startup innovation kind of thing. But when you're talking about a Main Street business, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I think it's maybe the distinction is what we're not is maybe easier. So we're not a large corporate. We're not venture-backed startups. And so I would say small, medium-sized businesses, frankly, as I said before, a lot of the backbone businesses that make up the majority of employment across the state, the folks that are wearing a lot of hats oftentimes, the ones that don't have people that are seeking out incentives, the ones like me and my own experience as being a bootstrap founder that have the sleepless nights when payroll's coming up and you're not sure if all the checks are going to come in. And so we just felt like that an office that resonated with those majority of businesses that make up the state needed to be created so that there was an advocate and a voice and someone that they could lean on to just frankly help grow better and easier.
What excites you about this job? Why did you take this job? You are an entrepreneur. We'll talk a little bit later, maybe about some of your entrepreneurial ventures and how you got into the game, if you will. But what excites you about this? And what do you think the potential is? You mentioned the big numbers that are there when it comes to the number of these quote unquote Main Street businesses. What's the potential?
Yeah, I think it's diffused growth, but it's significant. So as I said before, the volume of businesses make up the majority of employment across the state. And if we can help spur growth in jobs, growth in efficiency, growth in innovation among these types of businesses, that can mean big things to communities across the state. So to me, my motivation is I've had a really blessed career with awesome opportunities to both be an entrepreneur and serve entrepreneurs. And I just believe the small businesses of the state are just some of the hardest working people. And oftentimes, again, because they're so head down and they're not asking for help oftentimes, I think that they can get overlooked. So to me, the motivation is to be an advocate who understands what's going on, to be somebody who is open to listen and hear from them, And again, I don't think this is the type of group that's looking for handouts per se, but I think having some advocacy and having the ear of the Commerce Secretary and the governor, I think can only be helpful for this important sector.
Yeah, as you look at maybe what are some of the biggest gaps or pain points for entrepreneurs and these Main Street businesses around the state, are there some areas you think you're going to really, and your office will be diving into to help these entrepreneurs?
I mean, there's three phases of growth in business. Your startup phase, just getting off the ground, the maintenance and growth phase where you're climbing that S curve, and then as you start to level off toward the end. So I'm looking at it early on, day 4 now, through those sort of three particular sort of areas. Candidly, Gary, I'm doing a lot of listening and deep data dive right now. And I've said this a few times that I'm really trying to not be prescriptive in terms of what we're going to do. I will say one particular area that is unknown, both of challenge and opportunity, is the retiring generation of baby boomer owners that are pretty significant across the state in terms of volume. And we think that there's a real opportunity to be more proactive in reaching out to them, figuring out how we can help more of them have a strategic exit plan. And we think there is a growing demand for what's called entrepreneurship through acquisition, not just among institutional investments like private equity or family offices, but solo business owners that want to get into entrepreneurship, but don't know if they want to just start something from the ground up. So we're really going to try to see how, again, we can learn first, figure out where there's gaps that are appropriate for government to step in, and then just to help be an important stakeholder in elevating that opportunity, because we think if we can help encourage healthy transfer of ownership, that's going to mean a lot for employees and communities across the state.
Are there other states that are doing similar things to this in terms of creating an office like this?
Yep, we know of about a dozen or so that have offices like this. And in my early deep dive, not all of them are created equal in terms of focus, budget, and certainly not with the support of the governor like we have. I do just, again, I think there's an important benefit that we have in having a business-minded business owner governor. This is something that he understands deeply, and I think that's really going to be an asset as we get this office off the ground.
And as you look at, and again, you use the term Main Street business, but you look at the Indiana economy, a lot of things going on here in Indianapolis. We were just in Northwest Indiana. They've got real momentum there with a number of things going on in Northwest Indiana, Fort Wayne. You can identify a number of metropolitan areas around the state that seem to be doing pretty well and have a bright future. But I know there's been a lot of concern about just the rest of the state and rural Indiana and smaller communities. Does this office kind of get at that whole idea of lifting the entire state up?
Absolutely. It's our intent to span all the corners of the state as we listen and learn from entrepreneurs and business owners. And so I think in fact, it almost flips the script a little bit. Because Main Street businesses have an outsized impact on the smaller communities. I think the work we're going to do will hopefully have an outsized impact and an outsized focus on those communities. It's my intent to develop as much collaborative strategies as I can with the other offices in the state that are talking to the rural communities. I'm a big believer in where there's already momentum, let's also piggyback on those things. Again, day 3, but I'm going to meet with the leader of Okra and try to figure out where and if there's opportunities for us to collaborate on things. And as the short answer is absolutely, rural Indiana is top of mind. And I think just with the focus on Main Street, I think it's going to have an outsized impact, the work that we'll do.
Is there, in your view, is there a need to change the mindset of Hoosiers more broadly in terms of when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship, risk taking? Indiana has had a reputation for not being risk taking. Maybe it's a Midwest thing, but do you think the culture in the state needs to shift a little bit to be more open-minded about business growth, innovation, small business growth?
Peter Drucker famously said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think it's tough to argue with. I think we have humility as Hoosiers. That is a part of our character, which is a real benefit. And like any benefit, there's a point of diminishing returns. So part of what I think we'll want to do is we have a lot of success stories across the state that will be great illustrations of entrepreneurship, Main Street businesses that are thriving, exits in which everybody wins, finding and telling these stories, and frankly, getting Hoosiers to get past the humility and be proud of some of the successes we've had will be an important part of what I'm going to be doing. The other sort of cliche, facts tell, stories sell. We need some great stories to inspire people. That's what changes culture. Honestly, stories are durable. They connect with people in deeper ways. In terms of like risk aversion, there's a lot of folks that have deep hope to do something different. And sometimes it just takes a compelling story that amplifies their belief that it's possible. And so that'll be one of the things that we're going to try to capture, retell, and probably retell ad nauseum, because I just think the stories of other people doing it can be the sort of inspirational secret sauce to get people past what are legitimate hangups, but ones that I think are oftentimes just in their head. So I'd love to help encourage, to the limited degree that I can, to change the culture to really, again, believe in ourselves, believe in what's possible. Not to say lose the humility, because I think that's a critical, important thing to learn and grow, but to just, to believe in ourselves a little bit more.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that. I think you answered it there, that storytelling, telling the success stories that exist in Indiana that people never hear about. That's going to be an important part of maybe your overarching mission.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know this better than anybody. We're in a digital media age where cutting through the noise is the majority of the battle. I don't go into this with sort of the idea that it's going to be easy, but I do think, that's absolutely going to be a part of the role, is capturing great stories, telling great stories, getting those that have had successes to be willing to have an abundant view and share what's worked. I want to try to help facilitate the sharing of best practices across the state. The sort of classic line, the mission is greater than there are the workers. So let's jump in, and the opportunity is plentiful.
As you look at partnerships you will seek to make around the state of Indiana, how about the higher education landscape? Obviously, Indiana has a tremendous network of public and private colleges and universities around the state. How important are those institutions going to be to your mission?
Oh, critical. So universities are always key stakeholders in an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And having spent a little time at Purdue, I taught briefly in the entrepreneurship program there, have great friends at both IU and Purdue and across the state. And so we'll be connecting with those folks, Butler as well. And so we're going to try to help, where we can. Again, there's, I think, an opportunity for greater alignment in this space. And I think it's similar to what I said about the storytelling. I think too often we're siloed, and the most effective ecosystems tend to break down silos, tend to be collaborative, tend to have an abundant mentality rather than scarcity. And to the degree that I can help encourage, that's what I'm going to do.
Is part of the mission to create, in a sense, a brand for Indiana to be? I think Indiana has a pretty good reputation as being a business-friendly state. I think that's existed for some time. But as you look at creating a brand in Indiana that suggests this is a place where startups, where Main Street businesses can grow, is that part of what you want to do?
Yeah, so I'd be careful to say brand, because the Secretary Adams has pointed out, we have a few already. And in terms of visual brand creation, that can be an expensive and sometimes fruitless effort. I would prefer to say I want to create substance and ease and reduce friction where we can. I think one of the other good things about the character of Indiana, maybe this is stealing a little bit from Missouri, but we have a quasi show me state. Like, you can tell me all you want, but people of Indiana they want to see substance more than flash. And as we're building this office, I think operational substance is going to be the foundation more than just, again, I'm a marketing guy as a background. I think there's value in sort of the visual brand creation, and that stuff can help create clarity and visual distinctions. But I would say that's probably secondary to the product formation that we're going to be working on.
Do you know yet how you're going to measure success? Is it the number of companies created or businesses that are elevated? How are you going to measure success?
Candidly, no. I'm going into this. We're essentially a startup within a big operation here. And so I'm trying to go in with speed, but a clear process. And I don't want to belabor you with systems details, but we're going to capture a bunch of data. We're going to analyze it. We're going to see what the data tells us, see where there's gaps, and then that's really going to inform the strategy. We're not going to, any good business knows the goals and the key performance indicators you choose really should drive what you do and how the operations are built. And as I said at the outset, I'm really trying to not be prescriptive. Obviously, I have a lot of opinions and a deep background in this space and a lot of ideas for what we could do. But what's going to yield success is ultimately operational focus. I've already in 3 days, the opportunities to meet with people in non-strategic ways are beyond my capacity for the next couple months. Any good strategy says no to a lot of things to say yes to the vital few. Again, rather than say I know, I'd rather just walk through what the process is going to look like. But we're going to move fast to determine those things. And like any good sort of startup, we're going to iterate as well. I'm not going to be married to any particular strategy just because it happened to come out of my office. If it's proven to fail, we're gonna just let it fail and move on quickly.
Much more ahead with Brian Schutt, the new director of the Indiana Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, when the Business and Beyond podcast returns. Stay with us.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
We build Indiana. The Laborers International Union of North America are men and women building roads and bridges to get Hoosiers where they're going today and a new energy infrastructure that will keep Indiana competitive tomorrow. LIUNA's over 12,000 statewide members also grow local economies, earning good union wages, shopping where they live and work, and paying taxes. We build Indiana for good jobs and stronger communities. The Laborers International Union of North America. We are LIUNA.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Brian Schutt. Brian is the new director of the Indiana Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, which itself is a brand new entity focused on Main Street businesses and growing those businesses, startups, getting new ideas to the market, those types of things to help move Indiana and the Indiana economy forward. Brian, let's talk a little bit about your path. I mentioned at the outset, we go way back to when you were a little guy and good friends with our mutual friend, Seth Morales. And we all remember, Seth, you were a Purdue guy. You were at Purdue.
Oh, yeah.
Seth had a great career as a receiver at Purdue, and he caught that touchdown pass against Ohio State. And I will never forget that.
Oh, me neither.
Yeah.
Running onto the field was a lot of fun that year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're hopeful that Coach Odom can have a good fall up there. We need it.
Yeah, a lot of Boilermaker fans hoping that as well. You grew up in Indianapolis, went to Lawrence Central High School. Talk about growing up. What was growing up like for Brian Schutt?
Yeah, so I'm a son of a pastor and a nurse. So I was not exposed to business, a great degree early on. They're both, fantastic, very creative. So creativity was part of my upbringing, but not necessarily business. And so I always say I became an accidental entrepreneur post Purdue. I had a tremendous opportunity to work for a serial entrepreneur in Mexico, as Gary.
Yeah.
And so that was a great sort of, I call it my masters of entrepreneurship, being thrown at problems and being told to problem solve and not given a ton of instructions, which is proving helpful to everything I've done, including this role so far. I worked in communications for a few years and then had the opportunity by the help of the Great Recession to become an entrepreneur. A good friend from Purdue and I just started a residential heating and cooling business called HomeSense that we sold, and we're still minority owners, but sold to a great local business called B&W earlier this year. And that sort of afforded me the margin to think about this role. But maybe more importantly, in the process of growing HomeSense, we invested and redeveloped a 30,000 square foot industrial space that we converted into a co-working space. And we've had hundreds of businesses that fit the description of Main Street businesses that have been members in our space. And we've walked alongside, and collaborated with and coached and supported those businesses for the last 8 years. And really, that was the catalyst for me to really just start to develop a heart more broadly for these types of businesses, understand really the needs in a deep way. And again, as I said, walked alongside them in a lot of different ways, everything from trying to help generate referrals, whiteboard sessions, introductions to great service providers. So again, just know deeply and innately the challenges of these types of businesses. And I do think that both personal experience and then experience in support side is going to prove dividends as I get going in this role.
Yeah. Now, did I read when you got out of Purdue, did you start out in the financial services sector? And that apparently was not a fit.
That was a short-lived, that was a short-lived experience at Wells Fargo. No knock on the brand or the people. It was a very square peg, round hole. I asked too many questions. There was a very prescriptive job for somebody right out of school. And I was asking sort of corporate strategic questions that were 15 layers away from my office. So I probably should have known at that point I should start my own business.
What about entrepreneurship, as you mentioned, an accidental entrepreneur, as you describe it? What is it about entrepreneurship and building something that gets you excited and really makes you passionate?
Oh, man. So the abundance that we have as a country is not by accident. And I think it's something that we often lose because we were born into it. I think sometimes we think it's permanent, but I deeply believe that the growth that we've seen as a country there's a mix of things that had to come together for it to look like this. But entrepreneurship is the backbone of the growth of the country. You can go all the way back to Benjamin Franklin, that I call the first entrepreneur. He was that first. And what motivates me, or what really connects me to this audience, is entrepreneurs are the problem solvers. They step into gaps in the marketplace and they find new solutions to things. And I think the world looks a lot worse if you don't have entrepreneurs solving problems. I thought about this a lot with the heating and cooling business. My joke would be that Maslow's hierarchy of needs rested on a functioning heating and cooling system, because everything else stopped when it's a 90-degree day in Indiana and you have no AC. And AC didn't happen by accident, but took a guy named Willis Carrier to invent AC. And then it took a nation of distributors to get it out there. And why these things matter? I'm in an office building that couldn't have existed in a functional way without air conditioning. And these things build on each other in small but significant ways. And again, I just deeply believe that more and more people need to come out of the woodwork that have unique gifts to solve problems. And if there's anything that I can do with this platform to help inspire that and help make the government a better partner and a better stakeholder in helping create and support more businesses like that it just fires me up.
You've got a lot on your plate, obviously, and are just getting into the role. What's a typical day like for Brian Schutt? Are you an early morning guy? What's a typical day like?
Oh, man. If I get a good sleep, try to get up early, try to get about a half an hour walk in before I get going. I've learned I can't start the day looking at emails. That's not an effective way to really get your mind. I try to spend time in meditation and prayer. Faith is something that's deeply important to me. If I can, I'm now learning with this new job, seeing my kids, maybe a coin flip in the morning. Got to get up early and get in the office. Ask me in a couple months and I'll give you a more sort of concrete answer, but it's going to be a lot of early mornings and late nights as we get this office going. I'm looking at it like I am in some ways a startup entrepreneur, and life balance doesn't really exist for a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe an unfair question as you're just starting out, but as you look out a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what do you hope your efforts, the efforts of your team, the state around this Main Street business idea, what do you hope it creates?
Yeah, the governor is on record of saying he wants Indiana to be the best state in the nation to do business. And so that's aspirational. That's a great North Star for me to continue to look towards. And I think in significant ways, there's tailwinds. We're not starting at zero by any means. There's really great work that's been done in the private sector and in the public sector in this space for years now, building off of past successes. I think as I said, we're going to try to learn as much as we can, do that gap analysis, try to just not have any ego in what we keep and what we cut, And hopefully, if we can do that and work really hard, we can help create, again, our role is to create a healthy soil. The entrepreneurs are the ones that are doing the harder work. And so we just want to create as fertile of a soil as possible for them to grow. And if we do that, I hate to invoke the field of dreams strategy, but if we build it, they will come. If there's a healthy soil here, problem solvers will find a way. So I'm going to do my best to, where we can get out of the way, and if we're causing friction, help support ways in which we can remove government. But if there's ways that we can come along and serve and support, do that well as well.
Brian Schutt, the new director of the Indiana Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Brian, great to catch up with you. I know you're a very busy guy and you're going to be busy for the foreseeable future, but congratulations on this new position. And I look forward to connecting with you from time to talk about successes in the future.
Love it. Thanks, Gary. Take care.
And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. We are a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.